Hey homies, what's up? Roblox Critical here. Today, we're going to be talking about the top 10 Roblox SCP games, part 3. Do keep in mind that it is of personal preference, and there might be some games that are outright better than the ones I'm talking about. But as always, there's always room for questions. Who was the first SCP? Get the correct answer and get your comment liked and pinned. Alright boys, let's go. Task Force. This game is a mission-based FPS game where you'll experience some pretty realistic military combat. As a starter, the only available mission for you is Operation Red Skies. As you complete the mission, you'll be able to unlock the second mission. Currently, there are only 2 missions available. Along with the mission, you'll be encountering SCP monsters that you need to destroy. You can either join or host a lobby. Do take note that a lobby has a maximum of 6 players only. The goal in this game is to eliminate the enemies, help your teammates, and complete the missions. And Overwatch will guide you and your team along the way. Cult of the Cryptids. Cult of the Cryptids is a story-based horror adventure game. The enemies in this game are called cryptids. They're pretty much SCPs with a very unique name, not just by a number designation. What you'll do in this game is collect items to survive. The game has different storylines to take with different endings. Try your best to complete objectives to win. This game also has various types of weapons that can be found around the map. Cult of Cryptids is well known for its well-detailed and vast map to explore, and it also offers an interesting story that will get you hooked. SCP Anomaly Breach 2. Our next game is called SCP Anomaly Breach 2, which seems to be a sequel of SCP Anomaly Breach. Well, it's in the name, so kinda obvious, but yeah. In this game, there are 3 roles: Mobile Task Force, the Foundation, and Class D. Each role has different tasks that they will need to perform. For example, Class D's main objective is to escape the facility while avoiding SCPs. There are items scattered throughout the facility, and you're gonna use the items in your favor and fulfill your task. It's pretty basic, nothing too shabby or too complicated to deal with. Project SCP. Yet another SCP game is a game called Project SCP. And yes, this game's truly an SCP gem that needs to be contained in your favorites. This is a round-based FPS game with SCPs. You might think it's weird, but it's not really that weird. Trust me, it's awesome. There are a bunch of roles, just like in SCP Anomaly Breach 2. Chaos Insurgents, SCP, Class D, and more. Before the round, players are given a chance to vote whether the game is friendly fire on or off. Roles are randomly given at the start of each round. SCP Containment Breach Roleplay. SCP Containment Breach Roleplay is a game for roleplayers who's also interested in SCPs. As usual for an SCP game, there are a bunch of morphs to use ranging from SCPs, zombies, corpses, etc. Each morph makes you spawn in a designated spot in the facility. You'll definitely have fun role-playing as a character in the SCP universe, but don't forget to follow the RP rules to avoid being banned. So yeah, it's a role-playing game, but SCP themed. Definitely the best of both worlds. SCP Area 02. SCP Area 02 is an SCP role-playing game with jailbreak-like gameplay. Kinda like most prison games, except this time around it's an SCP game. I mean, we kinda see that coming given those 2 games sort of complement each other, right? There are various teams, such as Class D, which are the test subjects, and once they're able to escape, you can join the Chaos Insurgency. Also, each team has different objectives to fulfill. Try to find some good servers if you want to play this game, as there are lots of servers consisting of role abusers. I have lots of fun playing this one. SCI Pathos 3. SCI Pathos 3 is a really fantastic SCP game. It's a game that has some similarities in SCP Area 02, so you know that game, then plus points for being the diverse and cultured gamer that you are. They have the same teams and ranking systems, but the difference is that SCI Pathos has the better visuals, based on my opinion. SCP Rooms. SCP Room is a free roam game wherein you get to roam the facility, but with a twist. Oh, I love twists. In this game, SCP monsters are released every 10 minutes and will hunt you down. Don't stay in one place forever. You can also discover different rooms around the map that contain SCPs. Oh yeah, just a reminder, when playing this game, be sure to lower your volume as some sound effects are pretty loud and irritating to the ears. SCP Tycoon. SCP Tycoon is a dropper-based tycoon. In this game, you get to build a tycoon with SCP themes. There are 8 different SCPs that you can choose to be the theme of your tycoon. SCP-049, SCP-173, SCP-035, SCP-939, SCP-106, SCP-096, SCP-682, and SCP-076. That's a lot of SCPs. It even includes one of the rarest SCPs. The gameplay is simple and just like the typical dropper-based tycoon games, so if you're a fan of tycoons and SCPs, try this game. SCP Containment Breach Obby. This game is basically an SCP-themed obby. You get to encounter different SCPs throughout the obby. SCPs make the obstacle hard as some jump scare and some may try to put an early grave. Try to beat the obby and reach the end. Maybe there's a surprise. Well, that's it for now. Smash that like button, bros. Don't forget to comment on the answer for this week's question to get yourself liked and pinned.